200,000 units are ready, with 1 million more well on the way. They are totally obedient, taking any order without question.
Do you like your army?
I look forward to seeing them in action.
Hello there. Throughout the entirety of the Clone Wars, the clone troopers of the Galactic Republic had some of the best and not so greatest arms and weaponry throughout the entirety of the Clone Wars and throughout their entire time a part of the Grand Army of the Republic. So today, we are going to be talking about the clone troopers, their arms, armor, weapons, vehicles, everything in between, and seeing how good they actually were compared to the Galactic Empire that would come later on down the line. So without further ado, here we go. But first, as always, we start with a little bit of a breakdown. The Galactic Republic's clone army was not created overnight. In fact, it took the course of over 10 years to create well over 200,000 clone troopers, with 1 million more well on the way, as many of these clone troopers had different arms, armament, armor, and everything in between to make sure that they were able to fight against the Confederacy of Independent Systems or whatever threats came their way whenever the eventual war would come to pass. But of course, the entirety of the Clone Wars would be started because of Jedi Master Sifo Dyas. Jedi Master Sifo Dyas had a vision into the distant future, where the Galactic Republic would have to face off in a war against an unknown threat, so he was influenced to create and commission a clone army with the help of one of the individuals from the banking clans, also known as, casually, Darth Plagueis the Wise. So Darth Plagueis gave him some money, he then went all the way to Kamino, and he commissioned the clone army for the Galactic Republic in case of a future event where there would be a war, according to his vision. This would then lead Count Dooku to then murder Sifo Dyas, take over the position as the person who would be responsible for the Galactic Republic's new army, but he had to find a template. This template, of course, would be the one, the only Jango Fett. Lord Tyrannus, now known as Count Dooku, would then put a bounty out on his very own Jedi apprentice by the name of Kamari Vosa. Some stuff happened here, we're not going to get into that, but what we are going to get into is the fact that Jango Fett accepted the bounty, hunted down Kamari Vosa, killed her, and then accepted a proposal from Count Dooku to become the template for the Grand Army of the Republic's very own clone army in the future, but only demanded one thing, and that was a non-modified clone for himself to raise as a son, and he would later become Boba Fett. Over the course of the next 10 years, the Grand Army of the Republic's very own clone army would slowly build up to the hundreds of thousands and probably to the millions by the time of 22 BBY. By that time, Obi-Wan Kenobi found the secret planet of Kamino after it had been erased from the Jedi archives. He found the Grand Army of the Republic's new weapon, the Clone Army, and he found Jango Fett along with them, who had just recently been involved with the assassination attempt on the life of Padme Amidala. Soon enough, however, the Battle of Geonosis would begin, and the Clone Wars would also begin. With a Republic victory on Geonosis, just barely, Count Dooku would then lead the Confederacy of Independent Systems against the Republic, but the Confederacy of Independent Systems would then secretly be led by Emperor Palpatine, otherwise known as Lord Sidious. Meanwhile, throughout the entirety of the Clone Wars, the clone troopers were given armor, weapons, different vehicles of different varieties, including starships, walkers, different land speeders, everything you could possibly imagine. They were provided with, and much more, from multitudes of different corporations, armament manufacturers, and etc., 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 until they got all the weapons that they could personally need to fight a massive army filled to the brim with probably trillions upon trillions of droids. Starting off, of course, with the Phase 1 Clone Trooper armor that was the standard issue armor for all clone troopers throughout the entirety of the Grand Army of the Republic in the very early stages of the Clone Wars, manufactured by the Kaminoan armor smiths. They sucked, unfortunately, because the Kaminoans didn't understand human anatomy. They weren't very comfortable, they were heavy, they were thick, they were plastoid, they were all white, and they weren't good. They weren't good armor pieces. Basically, not being able to maneuver out in the middle of a battlefield, especially considering where all the droids originally were and what planets they were invading, it was not a good idea to have heavy-set armor that you had to drag around and you could easily get shot with. But fortunately for the clone troopers at the time, the Phase 2 clone trooper armor would then kick in, and everything would be absolutely ridiculously fine. the Clone Trooper Phase 2 armor would be stylish, it would be mobile, it would be everything that you could possibly imagine for a good armor to be, and also given the fact that the Clone Trooper armor was also heavily customizable, allowing people to give themselves signature, looks and signature emblems and signature armor pieces to where you could identify most clone troopers just by what armor they were wearing at the time, instead of having to guess out of a crowd which ones were which, because only certain clone troopers got to have certain individual armor pieces, like Commander Cody and Captain Rex. Fortunately, when the weapons came into the picture, everybody was very happy with the weapons they got. The DC-15A blaster rifle was an extremely powerful long gun that was used by many of the clone troopers during the Battle of Geonosis, as well as the DC-15X sniper rifle, the Westar M5 blaster rifle, which was a fully automatic blaster rifle used by the ARC troopers, the DC-17M interchangeable weapon system, which was a weapon that was so cool that it was only used by the commandos that belonged in the Clone Wars, as well as the DC-15S blaster carbine that was primarily used because it was portable, compact, smaller than the DC-15A, and it slowly replaced it over time. Along with the RPS-6 rocket launcher, which was an anti-vehicle missile launcher, and the Z-6, which was a fully automatic rotary cannon used by support gunners, most famously used by the Trooper Heavy and Commander Thorn. And also the PLX-1 portable missile launcher, which was a short-range missile launcher that could be used for anti-vehicles and anti-personnel use. And finally, with the small arms, we have the DC-15S sidearm blaster that was primarily used by the Clone Commandos, and the DC-17 blaster pistols that were used by ARC troopers, most famously by Captain Rex, who used them all the time throughout the entirety of the Clone Wars. And along with their weapons, there would be a wide variety of clone troopers that would receive different training based on their weaponry, their equipment, and whatever they were using at the time to become elite soldiers on the front lines, with many of them having different positions, having different training for different weapons and vehicles and whatnot. Every single clone trooper was not only unique in their own right when it came to their certain rank and file, but were also unique whenever it came to their equipment and what weapons and equipment they were using at the time. But despite all of this, a vast majority of the clone troopers that were out on the front lines, taking it to the Confederacy of Independent Systems, were using these primary weapons, as well as multiple types of grenades, including EMP grenades and thermal detonators, just to name a few. Now, of course, as we are done talking about arms and weaponry, we have to talk about the ship. The ship is the thing that makes the entirety of Star Wars be what it is, traveling across the distant stars and being able to go to different planets to fight against the Confederacy of Independent Systems. And the most singularly important ship of the line was the Venator-class Star Destroyer, which served as a battleship, which served as a cruiser, which served as an escort ship, everything in between. The Venator-class Star Destroyer was so good that it was considered to be the most important ship of the Republic because it literally was. It was used for literally everything and anything, and could be possibly one of the most important ships in the entirety of the Galactic Republic's history. But unfortunately, as with many things in the Star Wars universe, the Venator-class Star Destroyer was quickly scrapped, thrown out, and it was replaced with a newer model, like the Imperial-class and Victory-class Star Destroyers that would be regularly built throughout the entirety of the Galactic Empire's history. And alongside the Venator-class Star Destroyer was, of course, the Acclamator-class assault ship, which played a very supportive role with the Venator class, being able to hold 16,000 clone troopers, speeder bikes, LAATIs, LAATCs, all-terrain tactical enforcers, self-propelled heavy artillery, and much, much more to keep the entirety of the Grand Army of the Republic supplied with arms, weaponry, and materials and resources as long as they were able to fight. As well as the multiple support ships like the Counselor-class cruiser and the medical frigates and the starfighters that supported them throughout the entirety of the Clone Wars, including the V-Wing starfighter, the V-Torrent-class starfighter, the ARC-170, the Z-95 Headhunter, and the Y-Wing, which all played extremely important support roles for the Venator, Acclamator, and all the support ships that they were defending during the time of the Clone Wars. But of course, there are also the transports, like the LAATI and the LAATC, with the LAATI being able to transport entire squadrons of infantry units down to the planet below from altitude, and the LAATC being able to transport cargo and heavy-duty vehicles and walkers on the planets below. with the LAATCs being able to transport a wide variety of ground vehicles, including the ATTE, the ATOT, the ATRT, the ATAP, the BARC speeders, the turbo tanks, and the Republic stun tank, just to name a few. And with that, those are the last vehicles of the Grand Army of the Republic and the last bit of arsenal used by the clone troopers during the time of the Clone Wars. I hope you guys have a good day. Make sure to hit that like button, hit that subscribe button, do whatever you need to do. Share this with your friends and leave a comment down below on what ships you want me to talk about next, and I will see you later.